And hello, everybody. Welcome back to Unslaved. So happy to be back with you. And we have Caleb returning once again. And we are talking about one of my favorite subjects, getting back into the Knights Templar and so many other subjects that are surrounding that. And so, Caleb, welcome back to Unslaved. So good to see you again, man. How you doing?
Doing good. It's good to see you guys.
Very good. Um, so, Michael, we're talking brothers and brotherhoods. We've spoken about this subject numerous times. We've had Gary Wayne on Unslaved. People can go check those out. We've done other shows on this as well. But what direction are we going to be going today in this particular show?
Well, thanks. Yeah, that's the interesting point here because people who've been following closely to everything that I've done on the Knights Templar and the Order of Sion and all of this, but there's been something that there's so many avenues, so many areas to go. But we want to focus here on something that is very, very important, spoken about it many times, and that is this sort of monastic wing of these characters, the famous Crusaders or Knights Templars. And that alone is a little bit startling. Some of the Knights Templars, Andre de Montbard, whoever you can think of, the Hugh de Champagne, a lot of these people fall into two categories. One was this sort of warrior knight, alpha male, knight in shining armor, crusader, blood dripping from his sword type, which is clearly alpha. But some of them were monks, or at least presented themselves as sort of holy monks. You get this. And you also get them coming out of these sort of fiefdoms, during the feudal times. And we often forget then that whole orders, like the Tyrannesians in Britain, and the big ones, the Cistercian order throughout Europe, but also in France, formed by people like Bernard de Clairvaux, people who never actually marched out to war. In fact, these are people who kind of stayed more at home. A few of these people might have tagged along, during the Crusades, but they weren't sword wielders. And back home, they were the ones to take care of the land, and there were feudal fiefdoms that they were. But these are part. This is the monastic wing, and so that's what we want to just look at, something interesting. And it was I was listening to Sean Ross. We're going to have him as a guest on down the line. uh, he mentioned something that sparked this thought. And he didn't take it where we're going to go, but it's a fascinating aspect. And later on, when we do have him on, I'd love to ask him about whether he can see the logic of where I'm going with this, whether he agrees or not. But that's, for another time. But the interesting thing is that Caleb has just relaunched his site, the Van Helsing Library, and has a section for people who are new to Sean Ross's work. So I thought, let's get Caleb on. He had sent me videos. He's got this new site. He's got his old site back up again. And what is more, he even interviewed Sean Ross. He's a South African, researcher who lived in Switzerland for many years and was even arrested because he started to dig into the whole matrix of Switzerland. Now, wait a minute. We were talking about Knights Templar and Switzerland in the same breath, in the same sentence. Obviously, our members know big connection there. I mean, look at the flag, look at the banks, look at the powerhouse insurance companies and all the rest of it, and the fact that Masonic orders all over Europe must apply to Switzerland, to a group called the Alpina Lodge, in order to get their papers, in order to be authenticated. Right? You have to subscribe to them. They've got to authorize you wherever you are. And then you have, the keepers of the Vatican Treasury coming out of Swiss Guard and all of this. So this Sean Ross is a living expert in Switzerland, and he doesn't have very pleasant things to say. And recently, Caleb, had interviewed him actually, because he's traveling right now. So I wanted to ask Caleb, thanks for joining us. Tell me, what were the highlights? Can you tell us a bit of background about Sean and maybe the highlights of your interview with him? How did that go?
Yeah. The interview is going to be a while before it's released. Um, But Sean Ross is new to me, actually. It was after our last interview here on Unslaved that someone sent Sean Ross as a recommendation to me.
Oh,
And I've been digging into his work and got hooked on it. And I really dug through as much of his work as I possibly could within this short amount of time. And we got a hold of him, and I really just uh, got him to comment on things that he already covers. Um, I was can't remember all of my questions, but I was interested in his academic background, which he actually studied Egyptian language, ancient Egyptian Demotic language,
wow.
when he was in university. And see, he's related. He's really come up with how do I even summarize it? What I can even gather from his story, from the tidbits that are sort of scattered throughout his videos, is that um, during the French Revolution, the Republicans were hunting down the Royalists, and not many survived. And Sean's ancestors were part of a Protestant group that were also being hunted down, and they made off to South Africa. So, ever since that time in South Africa, there's been a passing down of information as far as who the Rhodesians are. And I was in the army down there in Rhodesia, and he was, doing all sorts of operations during the Cold War. They even sent him out behind enemy lines by himself, like solo, and he'd be out behind enemy lines for extended periods of time, and he even infiltrated the KGB headquarters. Like, he got to the headquarter building and went inside. And this is during the Cold War. He went inside the KGB headquarter building in Moscow as part of his, operations as a solo dude in the Rhodesian army, right? Like, this dude's a badass. And anyways, he due to some of the things that he started seeing in South Africa, which were pretty morbid. They had dead bodies hanging on the side of the road. He saw this going on, and he left. Um, he left South Africa, left the army. Well, like I said, I don't know the full details of his entire story and everything, but he ended up in Switzerland um, after all this. So, like, that was like the first part of his life. Um, and so he's in Switzerland now, and now he's infiltrating the neo Nazis in Switzerland. So he actually is like in a brotherhood now, so to speak, or he's among the brothers of the neo Nazis, and they accept him in, and they actually treat him good and everything, like very amenable. But he wanted to get in and see what was really going on, and this all ties back to the instruction that he was handed down from his family. He said that since the days of the French Revolution, when his ancestors had to flee France and relocate to South Africa, there's been this information passed down in his family uh, by way of his aunts and uncles. And this is what brought him to Switzerland ultimately. And when he infiltrated this group and became, was in and amongst its ranks, he learned about a group called Octagon Switzerland. And somehow he made the connection with ancient Egypt. So Octagon Switzerland, he calls it the base of Pharaoh. So I've really been looking into his information pretty deep, and I asked him some of the questions of some of the pertinent points about, seeing this picture. How is Switzerland like the base of the Egyptians, so to speak? There is a story there. There is multiple threads that come in and illuminate this picture. So, particularly during the Roman Empire days, there was a tribe in Europe called the Alemannic tribe. And they're kind of like European traders as far as tribes go, because they really like sold out to the Romans, whereas these other Europeans were really stiff in their resistance. The Gauls were pretty stiff in their resistance until they got wiped out, till all of their fighting men got wiped out with relative ease by the Romans. The Germans continued the fight for a lot longer. They way out survived the Gauls, the Celts. But this Alemannic tribe, they were, not to say they were the only one that sort of sold out to the Romans, but they're the ones that are really connected to the Alps. They're sort of on the eastern side of the Alps. If you look at a map of the ancient tribes, it's important to really check out some history about how all that went down between the European tribes and the Romans, and because what it was, according to Sean, the Romans were Egyptians essentially, which is a valid point of view. Actually, they descend from us. So,
Sorry, Caleb, you were kind of breaking up there. Can you just start from where you were saying the Romans were the Egyptians? What's that about?
yeah, the Romans, from what I understand. So
Yeah, you're
they
still
do have a link.
sorry to cut in. You're still breaking up big time. Hold on one sec here.
I'll just pass the floor to you guys for a minute.
Okay. Yeah, maybe try to jump on or jump off, come back in or something. The Romans were the Egyptians. I mean, interesting points here, Michael, about where he's going with this. So you got Switzerland, the Octagon group, right? And then the connection to Egypt. That's always been something you've spoken about as well with this.
Right. And if people remember, if they've watched the Female Illuminati 6-7 hour program that we did, there's many symbols in that. One of them is the symbol. I used it in reference to the Order of Sion. We were talking about the Female Illuminati, but I showed a picture of this is a media picture from a magazine of a huge room with an octagon and a large Templar cross of all things right smack in the middle, fusing the octagon, the colors of Switzerland, and the red Templar cross, and all these sort of semi-naked women all around it. I thought that might be slightly, coincidental. What an amazing image. And I kept it for a long, long time. I got into Sean's work about 10, 12 years ago. when I saw his video